Well, I'm going to start the lecture with some tech discussion, which I think, may not be relevant for this class, but I think over time, in 10 years or so, this is going to be, we'll remember this and go like, oh yeah, I remember those days when, cell phones do not have the built-in LiDARs. Or, people won't use cell phones as cell phones anymore. I think in 10 years, you're not going to be carrying, something like this in your pocket. More likely than not, you'll have Google Glasses or that sort of device where, you just wear your, eyewear. Okay, people who do not have a prescription can still just wear a frame, that has a projection system. So this way, you do not need to flip out your phone. I mean, you don't need to do this to look at something anymore because it's always on your projected. You just need some kind of eye gesture to turn it on. Wink, a little bit, and then your camera will automatically recognize. Oh, you want it, you want to be on, and then you can use your eye to select, what you want to do. So those days are coming. But LiDAR is a very interesting thing. LiDAR stands for, the dark part is basically the same thing as radar, but instead of using radio wave, it uses a laser. Okay, it uses an infrared laser to find out what is around your surrounding, what is around you, and what is the shape of those things. Okay, and for mobile devices, okay, I'm not considering a Tesla as a mobile device in this case. I'm talking about, well, it is a mobile device. It's just it's just a mobile device with really bad feature creep. We made the screen bigger. Oh, but now we need that thing to be mobile by itself because nobody wants to carry that screen around. So we added wheels to it, electric motors, and so on and so forth. So before we know it, Elon Musk has come up with the Tesla. Okay, but this is interesting because the idea of a LiDAR is for autonomous vehicles to be able to sense what is around it. Pedestrians crossing the street, lampposts, cars that are parked on the side, and stuff like that. And it has really good resolution. And I really think that something like this is going to be inexpensive enough. Right now, they're just targeting to $100, okay? But that's only the short-term goal. Can anyone remember how much a laser printer cost when they first came out? A few $1,000s, and those are not $2016 either. We're talking about what, $1985 or something like that. A few $1,000s is a lot of money. Okay, and so as a result, these days, how much is a laser printer? I just want a very basic black and white printer. That's all. And I want it to be laser. Huh? You go to Fry's and $60. Okay, $60 would be a fair assessment. The toner is expensive, but the printer itself is dirt cheap. So we are talking about the same kind of thing here. If they target $100, in 10 years, $5. Okay, for just the parts. So you can kind of imagine that you're wearing some kind of eyewear with a LiDAR device built into it. In other words, not only are you video recording, it's not only capable of video recording everything, but you can also see in 3 dimensions where everything is to a very fine resolution. One thing that you can do right away with that thing is to have a virtual keyboard. Because by looking down at your hand, the LiDAR can actually see the position of your finger. It can superimpose a virtual keyboard on whatever surface that you're placing your hand on. So that way, when you're typing, you're actually, well, if you're touch typing, obviously it's not going to help you. But when you need to look at the keyboard, hey, there's the keyboard. Virtually. But it's possible, okay? So this type of thing is just going to happen, and when it does happen, it will change a lot of things. So we'll leave that one here, and then we'll go back to the boring stuff. Okay, we'll go back and talk about lists. Okay, because I know how much you guys like lists. Okay, so we are continuing with this discussion. So we're going to explore more things they can do with lists. Okay, to be more specific, we want to take a look at what is a list of key pairs, and how do we use a list of key pairs. So the first thing we want to do is to start up a virtual machine just to see, okay, how do we construct a list of key pairs. Okay. And did I publish this particular program? I'm going to publish it in case anyone wants to. Oh, but once I publish it, is a snapshot of that particular version, so it's not going to be helpful in this case. Okay, so maybe at the end of the class we'll go ahead and publish it. Okay, so let me start up the virtual machine first. Android Studio in Studio. Okay, I'm not going to do any update right now because that can take a long time. All I really want is a virtual Android device. And here's one starting up. And to go back to the command prompt, just getting ready for the ADB command. Okay, so while it is doing this, let's go ahead and go back to the browser. If we need to create a key pair, it is a list of lists. So what we need to do is to use the content, specify the position, insert into L1, specify another one because we need a key and a value. And then we clone L1 and insert into L2 so that L2 will have one key pair. And then we can do the same thing again to insert multiple items into L2. So that's the first thing we'll do. But since this discussion is going to use key pairs a lot, and I don't want to recreate my key pair list all the time, I'm going to make the things that I have created up to this point persistent, which is something that we have done already. Do you guys still remember the counter program, the counter app, where when I start the app, it will ask me, hey, you left something in your shopping basket. Do you want to continue with that? So we'll go ahead and do that first. So we go to blocks, and then what we want to do is to be able to save anything that has changed over time. So I will go ahead and make a procedure because I can potentially call this procedure from multiple places. So I go to here, I make a new procedure, and I'll just call this save all. Okay. And I'm not going to do it in any way that is really kind of fancy. I'm just going to use one tag in TinyDB for L1 and one for L2. I'm not going to create a list of lists where the first item is L1 and the second item is L2. I'm just creating one tag for L1 and one tag for L2, just for simplicity purposes. Okay, so we go to Designer, we go to Storage, get TinyDB out here. And now we can go back to blocks and save that stuff. So we go to TinyDB. Sorry?
Put something called Fusion Tables Control in there.
Oh, did I put in the wrong thing?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. That's why. Delete. Drag the wrong one. Yeah, there we go. TinyDB. All right, so we want to go to TinyDB and say store value. And we need two of these blocks. The first one is just going to save L1. So the name of the tag is L1. It doesn't have to be L1. It can be list1, can be whatever I want to name it. But since the variable is called L1, I'm just going to use L1 for that. And then it's going to store the value of L1. So, and I will make a duplicate one to store L2. Okay, so here's L2, and here's L2. And I want to call save all whenever I make changes to any of the lists. So that will include most of the button clicks. So whenever I make a change to any of the lists, I'm going to call that procedure. So I will call save all here. Call it over here. one more time. Draw that over here. I think that's all those are all the event handlers that I have specified up to this point. Yep, that one should not matter. Okay. But just storing that L1 and L2 into TinyDB is not going to help me unless when the program starts up, I look into TinyDB and go like, hey, there's a value here. Do you want to start with those saved values? Okay. So I need something like that. And that will be in which event handler? What do you think? When the program starts, I wanted to take a look at TinyDB and say, did I save in L2 and L1 before? Initialize, very good. And which belongs to which component? Screen 1, very good, good job. So we go to screen 1, and then we say, when you initialize, when you start, do the following. This is why, graphical programming can be very tedious, because now we need to find a spot to put the event handler. There are ways to rearrange things. If you right-click over here, you can rearrange things. But the problem with all of these rearranging is it's not very systematic, so it becomes kind of hard to find stuff later on too. You can always kind of collapse, rearrange first, and then find the stuff, and then expand it and do some other things. So but either way, it's really kind of cumbersome. All right. So the first thing we need to do here is to get into a conditional statement, because I want to know whether there is something saved or not. Now, if I don't want to be very safe, I can check for one tag and assume the other tag is also stored. Okay, instead of checking, oh, here's L1, is L2 here too? Here's L2. I'm just going to make an assumption and go like, okay, if L1 is here, we'll just store that. I also want to double check with the end user and say, hey, you have stored or you have saved L1 and L2 from a previous invocation of the application. Do you want to restore those values? Because occasionally I may want to start with an empty list. Okay, not that I really need to, because in the designer you can see that I have two ways to empty the lists. So maybe I'll just be lazy this time and not do that. So I'll just be lazy, because that's really is not the whole point of this particular assignment. So what I'll do is I'm just going to retrieve as if they're there and give it a value. If tag not there, use a very sensible value for that. So I need to access my global variables like that. Okay. So the first one is L1, and the tag is going to be the same as L1. But the value, if tag not there, is going to be an empty list, because if it's not already in the database, just make it an empty list. Okay. So we'll go to lists and pick out an empty list, and then we'll do this one more time, but this time we apply that to L2 and change the tag to L2, just like that. So I'm not even bothering to ask the end user, do you want to restore to the list from before? I'm just going to say, okay, if I can find it, let's use it. If I cannot find it, then we'll just start with empty lists. The reason why I don't even bother to ask is because if the end user does not want to use whatever was saved, we can just click empty L1 or empty L2. It's easy enough. Is that okay so far? Any questions about this part? Nope. Okay. Well, before we go any further, let's test it, right? Because we don't want to make a whole lot of changes and then test after we have made half an hour's worth of changes, which is also something that is applicable to your exam 1. Exam 1 is on Wednesday, and it's going to be during the lab time, because I want you guys to be able to interactively do the homework assignment, well, not the homework assignment, but to program during that time. So the exam is going to occur during the lab time of this class, which is from noon to 1:20. Is that okay? All right. So if you are used to using your own device to do all the debugging and programming, go ahead and do exactly the same thing as you usually do. Are there any questions about that? Yep.
Open notes? Is it open notes?
It's open book, open notes, and open web. The only thing I do not allow is communication with somebody else during the test. But you can look up anything, you can Google, you can go to Stack Overflow. Just do not ask questions during the test in Stack Overflow or any Google groups. Yep.
So the test will be similar to what you sent us?
It'll be very similar to homework assignments, but it will be simpler homework assignments. So I'll give you like a program to start with and go like, okay, make these changes to this program to do X, Y, and Z. So you will need to have a development platform to basically interact with App Inventor. And unless you are very confident in your skills, you probably want to have a way to debug your program. Some people may feel that they don't need that. They just need to specify the blocks, save the AI file, turn it in without testing. Some people may be confident like that. I'm not that confident. Okay, I need to test every 10 minutes. So if you need a platform to test and you're not bringing your own laptop computer, you need to let me know ahead of time so I can prepare the USB sticks that can do that in the lab. Is that okay? Yep.
But we can use our own phone to test, right?
Yes, you can use your own phone, so you can use the QR code, but some people may not have an Android device to test it, so those people will need to run an emulator, but the problem is using the lab desktops, we cannot install the emulator package to run the emulator. But if you use your own Android device, you're fine. Okay. All right, so let's get back to this one, and we're going to save the APK file. Saving the downloads, and we use /adb devices just to make sure that we have the emulator running, and then we can go ahead and install. And we call this test. There we go. All right, so let's give it a test. The program has not really changed much from the previous version. The only thing we have added is persistence. So we'll go ahead and create first name and last name for myself. Okay, so we'll have fn for first name, and we'll insert it into position 1. Oops, I just put the wrong thing. Insert into L1, so L1 now has fn or first name. Then I'll go ahead and insert my actual first name, TAK, as position number 2. So now you can see that L1 is now FN, first name is the first item, and then TAK is the second item. It is a key value pair already, okay, because the key value pair is a list of 2 items, where the first item is called the key, which is what you use to find the item. It's kind of like a tag in the TinyDB. Serves exactly the same purpose. The second item is called a value. In this case, TAK is the value, where fn is the key. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is to clone L1 and insert it into L2. Now the cloning part is actually important. Okay. Oh, I need to specify where to insert to. So we need to specify 1 because 2 is not valid. So we need to specify the position, and then we say clone L1 and insert into position 1 of L2. Click OK. So when you look at L2, okay, it's a little bit harder for you guys to read because it has double parentheses, but it's open paren, fn, TAK, close paren, because L1 is now cloned before it is inserted into L2. Okay. And I can do the same thing with my last name. So in this case, I'm going to empty L1 because I want to create another key value pair. And in this case, I want to specify LN as last name, LN, and insert into position 1 of L1. There we go. And now we specify my actual last name, which is A-U-Y-E-U-N-G. into position 2 because the value is always in position 2. Insert that into L12. So now when you look at L1, the first item is LN for last name, and then the second item is Oyo, which is the actual last name. So one is the name of the quote-unquote field, if you will, and then the other one is what you put to fill in that blank. And then we'll do a clone L1 and insert into L2. Position 2 is fine. The position is not really important in the list of key value pairs, so that should be fine. And now we have a key value pair list where the first item is Fn with a value of tag. The second item is Ln with a value of Oyo. Are there any questions about what I just did here? Yep.
Each time you click the button, you are actually writing it out to TinyDB as well, right?
That is correct.
This
Yep.
is the procedure you made.
Yep. But I'm not too concerned about wearing out my flash too much because I'm running this in an emulator. Okay, I take it back because after all, I am running the emulator out of my solid state drive, which is also flash based. So there is a chance that I can wear out my flash.
How many cycles does Flash do?
I have no idea. Easily 50,000, possibly 100,000.
And then to use one of those, you would take like position 1 and use it into a list, and then it would be a list of 2 there. If you were trying to get something out of the TinyDB.
If you're trying to get something out of TinyDB or out of the list of key value pairs?
Either one, they were the same.
Well, you use different ways to do it. If it's TinyDB, then you have to use a TinyDB block to get a value, which is what I did in initialize. If you're getting it out of a list of key value pairs, then you have to use a list operation to look up that particular key and retrieve the value.
But the value you get out of list 2 is a list, right? When you get that position 2 out of list that you have.
Okay, that's a very good question. It depends on how quote unquote how you get it. If you use select, then you're getting a list. Because select basically just say, okay, we have several items in this list. Which item do you want? But since all the items in this list are lists themselves, so select will give you a list.
Okay.
But if you use the built-in call to do a key value pair lookup, then it will only give you the value without the key, because it uses the key to retrieve the value, and it only returns or only gives you the value corresponding to that key. So that's why that's a tricky question. It's a good question, but there are 2 answers depending on which block you use in the list operations to retrieve that. And we can illustrate it here as well. Okay. All right. So, but the point of this particular application is not even to talk about key value pairs, but to see if I can save all of these information and then retrieve that when I start up the app again. So I exited out of the app. I restart the app here, and everything is back. Yay! So that works. Is that okay? All right. But that will significantly make this class go a lot smoother, because since I really want to illustrate how to use key value pairs, it'll be very cumbersome if I have to reconstruct my key value pairs every single time I make some changes to the program. This way, I don't have to do that. It'll be even more helpful if I can save to different quote-unquote files. Then I can just say restore to that file, restore to that file. But that may be a little overkill for today, so I'm not going to overkill just yet. We'll do that later. There are always opportunities to overkill. Is that okay so far? All right. So to answer the question that you asked a little bit earlier, let's go ahead and compare the several ways to retrieve something from a list of key value pairs. So the first one, let me go back to the designer because we want to create buttons first. So we look at the table arrangement and say, okay, we'll need more rows now. Okay, let's give it like 6 rows. Okay. And then we'll go back and say, okay, let's add some more buttons to these rows. I'm going to add 2 in this case. Okay. And we'll change the text and also the name of the buttons correctly to the appropriate values. So the first one is to use a select. Okay, select from L2. And then the second one is going to use the lookup, key value pair lookup. So I'll change the name first, and then we'll look at the blocks. Okay. Find value L2. Okay. And we'll name the buttons accordingly. The first one is corresponding to select. The second one is corresponding to, I think the block is not called find, but we'll see. Okay, so we go back to the blocks, and then we look at lists, and then we take a look at how many ways can we retrieve something from a list. Okay, so the first one, okay, this one is one of those two, but I'm not interested in picking a random item, so let's skip that one. So the first one is this select call here. The select call, is documented here. It says right here, returns the item at position index in the list. And index is this slot here, and whatever list you want to retrieve from is the first slot. So that means if you have a list of key value pairs where each key value pair is a list itself, the select call will give you a list of 2 items. The next one that I want to explore is, I think, the last item, or very close to the last item. It is the last item. It's called lookup in pairs, or finding. So in this case, let me first explain what these 3 items are. The first item is the key, which is Fn or Ln in the example. The second one is the pairs, which is a list of key value pairs, which in this case is our L2. And then the third one, not found, is very similar to value tag if tag not there. Okay, it's the same thing. It's basically saying, what if in the list of key value pairs that this particular key is missing? Then go ahead and return this value. Yep.
Okay, and a key is an actual key value?
The key is the first item of the key value pair.
Okay, so you're not specifying position, you're specifying the actual thing.
That is correct. You do not specify position, you specify by the name of the key.
Okay.
Which is nice in many ways, because in this case, where I put, how I order these key value pairs within the list does not matter anymore.
Yeah.
I don't have to remember, the age of a particular person is the 16th item. I just say, okay, I remember the key to retrieve the age is age, which is a lot easier to remember. Then I can just retrieve it. The ordering within the list does not matter anymore. Yep, go ahead.
If you had multiple keys with the same name, would it just give you all?
No, it will only give you the first one. It doesn't really even specify, so that's something that we can test. But it will not give you everything, I know for sure. In fact, we can hover over and see how it describes it. It just says return the value associated with the key in the list of pairs. So it is vague because it's vague and not vague at the same time, because it does specify the value instead of plural. So it will only retrieve a value. But if you have multiple items of the same key, I'm not sure which one is going to return. I'm going to assume it will return the first one. But that is not necessarily true, because if the underlying representation isn't a hash, then ordering makes no sense. There's no such thing as ordering. But if I understand the implementation correctly, it's probably just using a search, like a linear search. So that will, in that case, it will retrieve the first one. We can test it. But that's a really good question. All right. So let's go ahead and give it a try here. So we'll go ahead and program the buttons to perform these particular blocks. So the first one is select. And we want to use the click event handler. And all I'm going to do is to use a notifier to show the result of the select operation. Okay. So we'll use the notifier, and we'll just pick out the easiest dialog box to use here, which is show message dialog. Okay, so we'll use this one. The message is going to be the answer, so I'm going to use the select block as the message itself, and it's only going to retrieve that from L2, so the list here is going to be just L2. The index is controlled by the box for the index position, so it's determined by this one here. So we just grab this. I did not do any error checking in this case. Probably we should do that, but you know, well, this is one way to illustrate what happens when the index is wrong, for one thing. And then the second thing is, you know, there's a way to make your program doesn't look as bad when it does quote-unquote crash because of some error happening, and I'll show you guys what to do with that. The title is just going to be the answer, so we'll just go to the text, pick out some literal text, just say the answer is, and then we'll pick out another one just to have something to write on the button itself. Okay, proceed. There we go. All right. So we just show the answer in a dialog box, but not store the answer in anywhere. Yep.
This is returning a list, so we should see 2 items.
Yes, it will. If you select the first or the second one with the current values,
Right.
it will give you a list of 2 items. Yep. But we want to also look at the other button. The other button is find or look up. Okay. The name of the blocks you use is called lookup, but I'm just going to call it find here. So in this case, it's going to be about the same thing, except I'm not going to use a select block anymore. I'm going to use a lookup, which is on the list. It's the very last item over here. And we also want to make sure that this is coming from L2 as the list of pairs. And then the key is text box input, not position, because we are not going to use position to retrieve items in this case. And then the not found is, well, I suppose not found is fine because it's definitely not a list. We can tell that it's not found. All right, so we got all the changes made. Let's go ahead and build the app again. So basically what I want to do in today's class is really just to illustrate most of the kind of really useful parts of using App Inventor, using the list feature of App Inventor. Okay, here we go. Save, overwrite. Okay, so start it again. It's very nice that I can retrieve the saved items, but this time I'm going to do one more time. So I'm going to save ln one more time just to see which one is going to retrieve, which one is going to retrieve here. So we'll specify, we'll empty L1 first, and then we'll specify another ln. Maybe fn, first name. So first name into position 1 of L1. There we go. So first name is, and I'm going to use my cat. So let's pick, I think last time I chose Red, so it's time for Riley. So here's Riley. 2. Insert into L1. So now I have another key value pair where the key is fn, first name, and the actual value is Riley. So now it's time to clone L1 and insert into L2. There we go. And you can see that now we have 2 first names and 1 last name. Okay. So we'll go ahead and check out the 2 buttons that we just added. We'll check out select first. Okay, so we'll say, okay, select 1, 2, or 3. So we'll say, okay, let's select the first one. In other words, I'm asking, what is the first item of L2? Now remember, L2 is the second one. So when I click select from L2, the answer should be fn tag as a list. because that whole thing, that whole list is the first item. So let's click that. Not a problem. If I say position 2, that would be Riley as a first name. Okay, and if I say 3, it would say Aoyong as a last name. So 3 and select, not a problem. And if I use any other number, it should come up with a runtime error. So let's go ahead and specify 4, for instance. And select, it comes up with an error. But the error message itself is somewhat useful because it's showing you that I'm attempting to get item number 4 out of a list of only things 3, and here's the actual list itself. So that by itself is helpful for debugging already. But the problem is it only gives you one way to proceed, which is to end the application. So you have no choice but to exit out of the application in this case. So one little detour I want to make here is to say, well, is there a way to make the program so that it doesn't crash in cases like this? When you go to screen 1, okay, or whatever screen is containing everything, there is a little kind of odd event called error occurred. And it says right here, this event is raised when an error occurs. Only some error will raise this condition. For those errors, the system will show a notification by default. You can use this event handler to prescribe an error behavior different from the default, which is getting out of the application, crashing out entirely. So let's check this out. Okay. So just by including this block here should make a difference already, but I want to make sure, I want to confirm that we actually got here. So that means, I'm going to use a notifier dialog box just to confirm that we got here. So we want to use the simple one, which is show message dialog box. But the message itself is actually going to be complicated because I want to incorporate all of these elements into the message. So it's going to be a join in text. And it's going to have many components. Now, you might think 4 components would be enough because I just need 1 component per item. But this will concatenate everything with no spacing in between, making it very difficult to read. So it's much better if I just use, like comma at least between all of these things. And let me look up text here and see if I can do this really quickly. Split, no, that's not going to work. Replace, new. I know a quick way to do this to make it automatically separate. You guys will look at this and go like, "Tack, that really is a hack." Well, it is. I'm going to use a list. Because all the items in the list, when they convert into a string, they're all separated by a space. Right? So I'm just going to abuse that feature of a list. There we go. So now I can just say which component, which function name, which error number, and what is the message. Put it into one gigantic list. And then for the title, I can do something a lot more static. Okay, and I can just say error occurred, which is the name of the event. And then the button is just proceed. There we go. So now we have what we call an error handler, which is basically saying, okay, whenever something bad happens, this event gets triggered. Okay. All right.
This is for any error?
Well, it doesn't specify very clearly which ones. It only says for some.
Okay, but it can be more than one.
Yes.
Okay.
So you can basically identify by the error number and also by the function name and also the message. So if you use a conditional statement within its event handler, you can actually resolve, okay, what got me here in the first place. Because in certain things, for certain things, you might want to just save everything to TinyDB and just exit out of the entire application. For other things, you might just want to give the end user a warning message and go like, okay, this is why I cannot proceed, but I'm not going to crash out. So you can choose what to do at this point, whether to close the app all entirely, or whether just to give an error message and say, okay, this is not good, and this is how you can fix it.
You could also build the conditions inside this one.
Yes.
Thing and then decide which based on the error that's returned. Okay.
Yep. But we want to kind of see what is the name of the component, what is the name of the function name, error number, and stuff like that. Because those are all information that you can utilize in your conditional statement to decide what to do with that condition.
Kind of test it and see what.
Yeah. Because the documentation is not very clear.
Right.
Because you can check it if you want to. I mean, you can go to.
Normally, error checking is done with a try. Is this like a top-level try of some sort? Or?
This is a catch already. It's a catch already. So the try is implicit in everything that we do.
Okay.
The throw is internal to App Inventor. We have no control over the throw.
Okay.
And what we specify as an event handler is really the catch already.
Okay. Yep.
So if you think in terms of throw catch exceptions and stuff like that, this is the catch.
Okay.
Yep. All right. So let's go ahead and give it a try. Give it something that it cannot process and see if we can catch it. And while it's doing this, we can always look it up. App Inventor error occurred. Ha, the long way of doing things. And it doesn't say anything. Doesn't specify what kind of error it will catch. And this one does not specify that either, I don't think. Error occurred. Oh, I guess there are certain things specifically that it will trigger. If you try to save a file and it cannot save it, it will raise that event. Okay, there we go. So it does give you a list of things that will raise this particular event. MyStorms, Bluetooth, Twitter, sound recorder, activity starter. Okay,
So let's.
so the error occurred event is currently used for a small set of errors. So I'm guessing that the list errors cannot be caught.
They just basically haven't implemented all the correct error code.
I'm guessing the internal code did not have the necessary try, throw, and catch. So that's why it could not link to this one.
Okay.
Well, we'll give it a try. All right, so we want to select from L2 and we want to pick number 4. Okay, so we want to pick number 4 and select from L2, and it did not. This is not my message, so it didn't catch it. Good thing I have everything non-volatile saved in TinyDB. I can crash as many times as I want, and I don't have to redo the list. All right. So the next thing we want to try is find value, which is lookup. Okay. So we want to specify in this case the content, which is going to be the key. So the key is going to be either ln for the last name or fn for the first name. So we'll try ln first because there's only one answer to the ln. So we say ln is the key that I want to look up, and let's go ahead and find that in L2. And it comes back with the answer of Aryang, which is not a list. So this is the big difference between select and lookup. Select will give you the entire item, including the key as a list. But lookup is only going to retrieve the value, which can be a list on its own too, But it is whatever it is, it's just returning the value part, but not the key part. Yep.
So yeah, so I kind of want to use this in my program, but we have to implement our own key checking to make sure we don't duplicate keys, basically.
Well, that's the next thing we can check is if you have duplicates, what is it going to do, right? So we'll go ahead and specify first name this time. Okay, so we specify fn and say look find value in L2. My guess is it's only retrieving tag, but not writing. Because it seems to make sense it will only go sequentially search for that, and the first time it matches, it will just say, okay, I found it, and this is what it is.
So we could basically go find this, if it's in the list, get the position,
Right.
replace it, if not, then add it.
Right, then, but you have to use your own logic
we have
to
to
do
use our
it.
own logic
Yep,
to do that.
you have to use your own logic. Yep. All right. So are we good with this so far? Okay. All right. So the next thing we want to do, as you said, is now that we know how to look up something in a key value pair list, how do we put something into a list as a key value pair to begin with? We want to check for duplicates for one thing. Okay, if it is a duplicate, do we replace or do we just keep the one that is already there? Okay, so there are many things we have to consider when you are constructing a key value pair list. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what we can do with that. And the code corresponding to that, we'll make a key. We need a button to correspond to that. So we'll drag another button down here. Which one do you guys want to work on first? Replacing or, well, we can make it a single procedure, but then we have to use different buttons because one is going to replace and the other one will not replace.
Yeah, should replace it.
Okay, so we say create key pair. It's kind of clone L1 and insert into L2, but without duplicate. Okay. Okay, long name to do that. Add key value without duplicate. And then the other one is going to be replace. Okay, so let me just explain what these two, what are the differences between these two. So both of these buttons will assume L1 is a key value pair. The first one, which is add KV without duplicate, will first check whether there is a key value pair corresponding to that key. If so, it's not going to do a single thing. The second one will replace it if it is found. If it is not found, it will just create it. So one is going to check first. Okay, if we have the key value pair corresponding to the key already, then don't do a single thing. Keep the one already in the list. The second one is going to replace if it is found. So that's the only change of behavior. If the key does not exist in the list, then in both cases it will create it. Is that okay? All right. So let's go ahead and see how we can perform these operations. And I need to name the buttons correctly, because otherwise I cannot, relate the buttons to what I need to do. So this is add KV without duplicate, and this one is replace KV. That should be enough. All right, so we go to blocks, but before we do anything, it is a good idea to go through the lists and see which blocks we can utilize. Okay, so which one is going to be useful? Well, this one is going to be useful because we can check whether it is there or not. Okay, so it's going to be useful regardless. Let's see. Append is going to be useful because if it is not there already, we can add to it. That's good. And replace is going to be useful too, but in order to use replace, we have to know the index. Okay, so the second button, which is replace KB, is going to be replace is going to be useful, but we have to be able to find the index first. Yep.
We could write a procedure that returns the index if found.
Say again?
We could write a procedure that returns the index if found.
Right.
And
So that would be the first thing we need to do because there are no built-in blocks to do that.
And then maybe returns -1 if not found.
Right.
Okay.
All right, so we'll go ahead and make a procedure first, and we'll test it step by step in this case. So we'll go ahead and write the procedure, and this time the procedure does give me a result because I need to know what is the position of the key value pair within the list. Okay. And it will need several information to do that. So we'll say index of KV pair. Okay. So it will need several pieces of information, 2 to be specific. One is going to be the key value pair list. So I would just call that pairs, which is the list of key value pairs. And then the second one is the key that I'm looking for. All right. I can't use any built-in blocks to do this in one single step because otherwise I wouldn't be writing this subroutine. So in order to do this, we can utilize a loop. Okay. And there are several types of loops here. We'll check out what type of loop is going to be useful. If then is not going to be, well, I suppose it can be useful if you do it recursively, but we are not going to do things recursively. So for each number can be used, but it's not really the quickest way or the best way to do it. This one looks like it's going to be really helpful because it says for each item in list, which means we have a mechanism to go through each and every single item. But when you find it, it cannot exit early. This one will go through each and every single item. And there's no way to terminate the loop early.
No break.
So there's no break. In other words, if the first item of the list is the one that you want, then you can make a note to yourself and say, I found it, but you cannot get out of the loop because of that. It would have to still go through the entire list. Okay, which is not really handy, but it is what it is. Okay, sometimes it is useful. The next one is while list, or while test, or while do. This is the most general form of a loop, which is very handy in this case because I can't exit early because I can just say, okay, we just found what we are looking for. It is time to get out of the loop. So I'm going to use this one, but to use this one is a little bit more cumbersome at the same time because I need to track my own index in order to perform the test. So we'll use this one. We'll pick out this thing here, and then we say, oh, wait, it doesn't click here, because this one needs a value. This is just a step. This is just a block to do something. It doesn't give us a value. Okay, but since we need local variables to control the index and stuff like that, we might as well just use this thing here. Initialize local name to blah blah blah, and in here do something. But this doesn't click. See, it doesn't click here. This one clicks here. That's fine. But this one doesn't click here. Well, we can go to control because there's always a way to specify, do something, and then tell me what is the result. Okay, and that does go in here just fine. Not a problem. Are we doing okay so far with how these blocks stack up and why I have to nest it in this particular way?
What's the local one for? What are you using the local name for?
Oh, we need 2. Okay, so there are 2 local variables that I'm going to need. So let's make 2 of these. Okay, and let's change the first one. The first one is going to be the index. I'm just calling it the index. The second one is a variable that I will call found. Okay, it indicates whether the thing that I'm trying to find is found or not. The index is initialized to 1 because that's the first index of a list, okay, which is not intuitive for people who program in C, C++, or anything based on C and C++. Found is initialized to false. So I'm assuming that what I'm trying to find is not in the list unless I can find evidence that it does. Okay. Are we doing okay so far with the two local variables? Okay. All right. So when should I stay in the loop? What are the reasons for me to stay in the loop? Two reasons.
Not found.
Not found yet. Okay.
Or it hasn't reached the end.
And I have not reached the end of the list. Okay, so we need a conjunction here to specify both conditions have to be true to stay in the loop. And that would be in logic. We pick out a conjunction and stick it here. And we will first say, if not found, okay? If it is not found yet, stay in the loop. So we go to logic, pick out the negation, and say if not found, okay? But if we have gotten to the end of the list already, we should get out already. In other words, if index is no longer a valid index into this list, it's time to get off, okay? So I need a math comparison in this case. So I need to make sure that the relationship is less than or equal to. So I need to make sure that the index that I will be considering in this iteration is less than or equal to the length of the list. So we go to here, we pick out the length of list, and then the list is known as pairs as a parameter. There we go. Is that okay so far? It's kind of long, okay, but this part here literally means not found. Okay, I have no confirmation that the key that I'm looking for is in the list up to this point. And then this part here, the blue part, is basically saying, but I haven't searched through the entire list just yet. Okay, so if what I'm looking for is not found up to this point, but I haven't really looked everywhere yet, keep looking. That's what it's saying. Is that okay? All right. Okay. So to look is actually pretty easy. Okay, the first I need two set variable blocks here. Okay, the first one is to set not found, set the variable found. So I'm going to set found to something, to set some expression here. And what do you think is going to be the value that I want to set found to? What about the item of this current index has the key that I need? Okay, because this way I can confirm whether it is found or not. So I'm going to say, let's do a text compare. So we'll compare the text for equality. One thing for the comparing is the key. After all, that is what I'm looking for. But then the second item is going to be a little bit tricky because even though it's based on pairs, it is not just an item of pair because each item of pair is a list of two items. I'm only picking the first one out of that. So I will need two selects nested. So I need to take out two selects and nest them. So one will provide the list for the other one. Okay. All right. So let's figure out what we should do here. Which operation are we going to perform first? The one to the left or the one to the right? Now that we have two select blocks, they're kind of stacked up. Which one is going to be performed first? The one to the right, exactly. Because the values, if you look at the slots here, the value of whatever this block gives me is going to feed into this block here. So we're going to perform the one to the right-hand side first, and then the one to the left-hand side.
So the right is the bigger list, is the big one.
Yeah, because you chop the bigger list into smaller list, which is a key value pair, and then you select the first item of a key value pair, which is the key. So now we say, okay, let's go for pair here. And this index is just my local variable index. That's the whole purpose of having index here. Okay. So this will give you, if I want to comment, I can say, okay, this will give you returns the KV pair at position index from the KV There we go. So now that we have a single key value pair as a list, I just need the first one because the first one is the key. So I need to go to math, specify a 1 over here, and that becomes the key that I need to compare with the key that I'm told to find. And I just set found like this, because if it is actually found, then found will become true, and then by the time we get to this loop here, it would indicate that it is found. Okay? But then I have to be careful with the next one, because the next one is going to increment the index. So I don't want to increment the index unconditionally, because once I have found it, I don't want to change the index. I don't want to increase the index by 1 all the time. So I need a conditional statement here and say that if not found, then go ahead and increase index by 1. So I'm going to duplicate this block here and say if not found, we want to set index to index plus 1. So math index plus 1. I think I can do it like this. There we go. All right. Are there any questions about the loop, which is starting from here and is ending here?
If it found it, it wouldn't even get to that if statement, right? Though, because
It will. It will get to the
Exactly.
conditional statement. It just won't get into the then statement.
No, I'm saying if it goes through the list the first time and it has a match, it'll set found to true.
Yes.
So then it won't even get back.
But it will. But this is a part of the loop. This is still a part of the loop.
Mm-hmm.
It is sequential to
Doesn't get a check.
this block here. These two blocks are sequential. This block versus this block, they're sequential, which means the execution of the conditional block is always going to be there.
I guess I just don't see why it would matter if the index gets incremented. If
Because
it's
I want to
found,
return.
Because the next time it hits the loop, it's not
Right,
gonna
it will
run.
exit the loop, but the index is important as an answer.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Because the whole point of this procedure is to find out what is the index
okay.
corresponding to a particular key. Okay, all right. So it's almost done, except in this case, if it is not found, I'm going to return an index that is 1 larger than the length of the list, which means whoever is calling this will need to compare that, which is kind of troublesome. Okay, so
You're going to return the one.
we are going to return the index. Okay, this is the return value.
Okay.
Because after all, the name of the subroutine is index of key value pair, right? So it's going to return the index of the key value, the position of the key value pair in the list. But the problem is, it's not a big problem, but it is just cumbersome. Because if the item is not found, it will return a number that is 1 larger than the length of the list.
Okay.
Now, whoever is calling this can figure that out, right? But it's kind of troublesome to always have to compare to the length of a list.
But you could do an if,
Turn it into 0.
turn it to or 0 or -1. Yeah,
Yes.
it gets 0. Negative
Yep.
1 is thinking
So
0.
that's what I'm going to do here.
Okay.
So that it returns a 0 if it is not found, and it returns a positive integer when it is found.
And then they can just compare it to 0.
Yep. Which is a lot easier because you don't need to look at the length of the list.
Right.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and specify a conditional statement after the loop and say if not found, then we set index to 0. There we go.
How did you do that?
For certain things you can type. So if you click a block and it has one single slot, and if you type 0, it will give you just 0. Whoops. Yes, you have to select it. There you go. But it only works in certain cases, so I don't usually use it very much because for most things it doesn't work like that. Right. So are we okay with finding the index of a key value pair? So should we do more blocks and do more programming, or should we check this first? Let's check it first. Well, we have some structure like this already. We have some structure, something that looks, okay, this block can go away because we know it doesn't work. Let's get rid of it. And we have something that looks like this already, so we can just go ahead and replicate this and apply that to the function that we just defined. So instead of using button find, we'll just pick one of the new buttons. Okay, it doesn't have to be any particular one. And we want to get rid of this block, but I'm not getting rid of the entire thing because I might need some parts of it. Go to my own procedures and say, which one do I want? Index of key value pair, that's the one that I want. And we also want to make sure we specify the right pairs, which is this part here, and also specify the right key, which is this one here. Then the rest we can toss away. Okay? So I'm going to use the text, the content of the first text box to provide a key. I'm going to use L2 as the list of key value pairs, and then this will just give me a number, which will be printed inside the dialog box. Be okay so far? Sort of? Okay. But this is the sort of thing that people should have talked about in cisp300 by this time-ish, because these are related to arrays and loops. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and give it a try. So you might have noticed that mobile app programming is programming. It involves loops, conditions, conditional statements. Well, because it is programming. All right. Start the app again. All right, so let's go ahead and give it a try. Okay, let's go ahead and try out something that is not there to begin with. Okay, so we'll look for middle name, and we say, okay, tell me what is the index of the key value pair in L2 that has a key of mn, middle name, and it says 0. Which is right, okay? That is correct. Let's pick something that is there, okay? Let's pick ln, last name. It should return a 3 because this is 1, 2, that's 3. Okay, very good. And we'll try the one that has a duplicate, which is fn. It should give me a 1 because the loop will exit as soon as it has found the first one. So we'll go ahead and give it a try. Fn. And it does return just the first one. Okay, so everything works the way it's supposed to. Are there any questions about this program up to this point? Or the approach of writing this program? Because I'm not only trying to teach you guys how to use App Inventor, but also how to approach programming, which is do it step by step, separate the code out, test it first, and then once you know it's working, then you can use it for the rest of the program. Are we okay so far? Okay. So now we can actually code the rest of the program. Now that we have this really useful feature, then we can go ahead and go back to this button here, okay? Because this is only a part of what we need to do, but not the entire thing. So we know that we'll still need. We don't need a show dialog box because we are changing the block here, but this is without duplication. So when you want to do something without duplication, it means if you find it, then you just don't do a single thing. If you do not find it, you just append it, which is what we want to do. So that means we need a conditional statement, because we have two ways of proceeding depending on a condition. So the condition is going to be dependent on this call here, because we want to see if the key is already in the list or not. But this does not click over here. Well, it does, but it's not supposed to. Because index of key value pair gives you an integer. It is not something that is either true or false. Now, if you click it like this and you run it, it will give you a runtime error. It would say that you're trying to use something that is not a true-false value as a condition. It's not going to like it. So what we need to do is to convert a numerical value into a Boolean, into a true-false value, and comparisons can definitely do that. So we can say, let's compare something. Let's compare the index of the key that we are looking for against 0, because that's the only thing we need to test is whether it's a 0 or not in this case. So we say, let's see if it is 0. If it is 0, then it's an easy thing. We just do the same thing as the cloning one, which we have done already up here. So let's see. I think it's called insert. Yep, that's it. So what we're going to do is to insert a duplicate of L1 into L2. So we can just, we can put it into the backpack. The backpack is really handy because it works within the same app2. And then we just slap this over here. And that's all we need to do. Now the else case, it depends on how you want to write the app. If you want to give the end user a dialog box and just say that this key is already in the key value pair list and therefore it's not added, go ahead and do that. So I'm leaving the block empty here just in case I have something to do. But at this point, I don't really need to do anything. Okay? Are there any questions about this part? Well, let's test to see whether this works or not. Okay? Being able to test programs somewhat interactively, being able to run the program only like within a minute of making changes to the program is a luxury. If you ask any programmer from the 50s, yeah.
If the flow goes to the else branch, what will it display?
It won't do anything. It won't display anything. It won't change anything. It simply would not do anything. Oh, you know what? I forgot one thing. I can change that later. Because we are changing L2 in this case, I'm not saving it again into TinyDB. I forgot about that part. That's okay. I can always just put it here. Just remember to compile later on to include this. That's all. Yep.
So this, if it's not in the list, it's going to put it in the position that we tell it to put it in, I guess, right? It's not
Oh yeah, it's not in. Yep, you're correct.
Okay.
Because I'm using the same block here, which is
Right.
inserting into a position. Yep, you're correct. All right, and we'll upload it, install, and then we'll test it. There we go. Okay, so this time I want to insert a initial. Okay, so we specify middle initial, and my middle initial should go to. Oh, it's the first thing. Oh, I have to empty L1 first because I'm creating a key value pair. So I have to empty L1 first and then insert this into L1 as the key. And then we have to specify the actual value. So we'll use Y as the value and insert it into L2. So middle name is Y, and then we say, we use the function, we use the button that we just defined earlier, add KV without duplicate. Okay, so this time it should add because there are no key value pairs in L2 that has a key of NI. So this time it should add to position number 2, which means it will push Riley to become the third item. Everything will be pushed on the other side. Okay, so click that. Yep, exactly what's going to happen here. But then I can also test again. If I do this one more time, what is it going to do? Ah! So it's not checking correctly. Ah! Okay. Well, good thing this is not saving the list just yet. So my mistake will save myself this time. Okay. So it is not doing that. It keeps inserting. Oh, did I click the wrong button? I was clicking the right button, am I not? I can always watch my own video right now to see whether I clicked the wrong button or not. I clicked the right button.
The alert right before that if condition and make sure it's zero. I mean, you already did that.
Do you have to get the
I know
required
why.
value out of that somehow?
I know why, because I didn't specify I didn't change the key. The key or the text box that is supposed to contain the key was uppercase Y, because that was the last thing that I specified to put into the key value pair. So all this time is looking for the key that is an uppercase Y, but it should be MI. So operator error, the program is fine. It's just the operator, the end user, is wrong. Okay. Let me show you what I mean by that. So I'm gonna replay the video as it is being recorded. So you might get a temporal disorientation. Okay. All right. So what we want to do is to shrink this a little bit so that the controls are visible. So you are, in fact, watching a video that is being recorded. And we want to, where's the control? There we go. So we want to go all the way to the end here, a little more. Okay, here. See, when I click the button, okay, it's going to click a little more, but Y is still specified as the first text box. So it's trying to look for Y as the key, but it really is not the key. That's the value of the key value pair. So when I click again, it's using Y. Yep. So that's okay. So that explains why it didn't work. Okay, it's an operator error. The program is not at fault. Okay. See how useful it is to do screen recording? No, seriously. When you are writing programs, okay, when you're writing and particularly testing programs for your other programming classes, it's no big deal in terms of Massstore these days to do a screen recording of your entire session. If after 2 hours of programming everything works fine, there's no need to review the recording, just delete it. Okay, it's going to be about a gig or two. It's not a big deal. But if you do get into some problem like what I did, okay, it's not working, but then I have doubts about, okay, did I do something wrong as an end user, or was the code specified wrong? Did I click the wrong button, or did I specify the wrong key? So I have all these questions, but I cannot remember what I did, right? Having a screen recording allows me to kind of go back in time and replay the sequence so I can clearly see, oh, okay, I'm using the wrong value as the key, and that's why it cannot find it. So that's really helpful to me. Yep.
Did you post a tutorial on how to screen capture?
Okay. Well, it's kind of hard to show how to do screen recording in a screen recording. Unless you have two mechanisms of doing screen recording. So you can use the first one, which you cannot record, to record the second mechanism to do screen recording. But to you guys, the quickest way to do it is VLC. Okay, now this part is getting recorded, so you can actually see it. So you can go to VLC. You can install VLC on just about any operating system. Windows, Mac OS X, Linux, just take your pick. You go to Media, and then you go to Open Capture Device. And in this case, you want to open your desktop as your capture device. And depending on how fast you can type and do interaction and what you want to capture. For instance, if you're doing something on the command line and the system is giving you error messages and stuff like that, it scrolls by really fast, then you might want to increase the frame rate, so this way you have a chance of catching the exact error message. On the other hand, if you're only typing, hand typing stuff, and nothing is scrolling by too fast, you can reduce the frame rate so you can save a lot of storage. Okay, so you can say, okay, maybe intermediate. Okay, 5 frames per second, and you don't want to play because you want to convert, which is basically saving the file. So when you specify convert, you have a whole bunch of profiles to select from. I don't know which one is the best in terms of quality versus how much space it's going to consume. So I'm just kind of pick the first one. Then you specify the destination file, use the browse feature, just say test.mp4, click save. Do you want to replace it? Yes. And you click start. So this will start your screen recorder. It doesn't show that you are actually recording, but it should be recording. Okay. So when you're all done, you can click the stop button and see whether the file is already recorded. So we look for this one and we open it. Is it playing or not? Nope, doesn't. Yep, it was playing, I think. But you can, sorry?
It looked very similar to your screen.
Yes, I know. Okay, let's do it one more time. Let's see.
This is just the video, not the sound, though, right?
Yeah, it only records the desktop but without sound.
You use sound some other way. And then
Yep.
merge it.
Yep.
Maybe it didn't.
Yep, it is
very
playing.
small.
It's right here. That's the player. That's why it's hard to find because because it looks like the actual VLC itself, except it is a VLC inside the viewer, inside the VLC player.
And then you somehow link your audio up to it.
If you want to do the audio part, in Windows it's harder because there are no easy ways to record both the desktop and the audio at the same time. You can always record it separately. You can use VLC to only record one to record the desktop, the other one to record just the audio. Then you can merge those two using like free tools. I think the Movie Maker in Windows, the one that's bundled with Windows, can do that already. So that's one way to do it. Okay. Let's see. We are running out of time, so I'm going to move on to the lab. You might want to review all the material that we have talked about and see if you have any questions so I can answer those questions in the lab. Alrighty. So we are